Mornings here in Tennessee, I wake up to the sound of aircraft. You can hear them coming in or taking off from Nashville. Not loud, it's just background noise. But back home in Canberra, mornings sounded much different. Magpies, a kookaburra somewhere off in the distance, cockatoos and rosellas eating pine nuts off our trees.
You better take cover.
I didn't realise when we moved that something as simple as nature would make me question where I belong. Or that I'd measure distance not in miles, but in funerals and missed mornings. I didn't realise either that cost wouldn't just be mine alone. And yet, it still sounds small when you say it out loud. It's not dramatic. I'm not walking around homesick every day. But when your baseline changes, you notice it. When I hear the planes here, I find myself wondering where they're headed to. When I hear a magpie call back home, I don't wonder anything. It just fits. And I think that's what I miss. Not beaches or landmarks, no. I don't miss tourist Australia. I miss Tuesdays. I miss walking into a bakery and grabbing a sausage roll and a nice coffee there without being a conversation piece. I miss going into Woolies and Coles and recognising everything without thinking about it. Fresh fruit, local seafood, Cadbury's chocolate, an entire aisle of biscuits. The times I've gone home for a visit, I've genuinely stood there in that aisle longer than I would care to admit. Like I'm conducting some sort of national audit. It's slightly embarrassing, but it feels like a reunion to me, not a spectacle, not nostalgia in some dramatic way. It's just that familiarity. And living overseas has done something that I didn't expect, because it's made me more Australian. Not louder about it, not waving flags, although I do have a Southern Cross tattoo on my arm now. I'm just more aware of it. Now, when my mum died a few years ago, I flew home for the funeral. That's something that people don't always talk about when they romanticise moving overseas. You know in the back of your mind that loss will happen, and you tell yourself that you're prepared, but you're not ready for that long flight home or those early morning calls. You're not ready to land and be somewhere that someone's not going to meet you. The first morning after I arrived back, I went for a walk through the streets where I grew up. I walked past the house that we lived in for my first 13 years or so. I couldn't go in, it's not our house anymore. But I just stood there for a moment. And a kookaburra landed on the power line above me. Then two more joined it. And they sat there briefly, flew off, laughing as they went. I took that as a sign, rightly or wrongly, that it was Mum, being joined by her two brothers who'd passed away in the few short years before, all from MND. And maybe that's sentimental, but at the moment it felt like comfort. And it felt like the place still knew me. And here in America, I'm often asked, where are you from? And sometimes I'll say Nashville just to try and end it quickly, but apparently that's never the answer that they're looking for, and I guess my Australian drawl kind of dobs me in straight away. Most of the time it's harmless, curious, but it does remind me that I'm slightly outside the default setting here. Because in Australia, I open my mouth and I'm just another Aussie going about life. I'm not interesting. I'm not exotic. I'm not explaining myself, why I'm where I am. I'm just there. But here I'm the bloke with the accent. Crikey, mate, put another shrimp on the barbie. And I don't resent that, because I actually like being different sometimes. I like being the bridge between two cultures. And I like the conversations that come from that. But you can't live permanently in translation mode. You need somewhere that you don't have to justify your presence. 6 months ago, we were back home for a visit. We drove from Sydney Airport straight back to Canberra, where we'd called home for 15 years before we moved here. Muscle memory kicked in straight away. Right side of the car, familiar roads. Stopped off for a meat pie and barrelin like we always did. Dinner with family, Aussie TV on in the background, the voices on the radio that sound just like home. Kangaroos playing dodgem cars down the Hume Highway. In many ways, it felt like continuation. But when we pulled up outside our old house, we couldn't pull in the driveway. And that stays with me. Because if we still owned that house, we'd probably be back living there by now. Which is an expensive way of saying that decisions matter. And we made that decision, and decisions have consequences. So when I leave Australia now after a visit, I notice myself marking things. Last Aussie breakfast, last drive on the other side of the car, last time hearing, how's it going, mate? And answering without thinking. Last time asking for a schooner. Then I come back to the US for a few days. My mind compares everything again. The pace, the tone, the supermarkets, the conversations. And then eventually I settle in again. I look at what we have here, our house, the opportunities for our girls, the life that we've built. Because here's the part that people don't always talk about. Living overseas is incredible. It stretches you and it expands you, but it's not free. You don't get to keep everything. You don't get to be fully rooted in two places at once. And if you have kids, the trade-offs aren't just yours. Brianna was born here. This is home for her. Georgia was born in Canberra. She's a proud Aussie. She talks about moving back. She loves the animals. She misses Nana and Papa. But when we went back last year, I saw her being treated as a little bit different by some of her old friends. Not cruelly, but just different. And as a dad, I felt protective and sad for her as well, because it made me realize something. Home doesn't automatically guarantee belonging. And maybe that's the part that I didn't fully understand when we moved. Because belonging isn't just a location. It's something that forms around you over time. And when you move, you interrupt that formation for yourself and for your kids. And if we stay here, well, this becomes our foundation. Their friends, their routines, their dance competitions, their normal. And if we go back, we reset everything. Now, sometimes I'm reminded that geography isn't infinitely flexible. And if money were no object, I'd probably live 6 months of the year here, 6 months of the year back home. Have an endless summer, an apartment there, keep our house here, homeschool the kids. And in my mind, that's pretty elegant. In reality, it probably involves a lot of luggage. But life isn't frictionless. So instead, I'm trying to build something that gives us options. And living overseas hasn't made me less Australian. It's made me more aware of what that means. And maybe this isn't even new for me. Because years ago, I lived in Samoa and I lived in Fiji. And Samoa especially still feels like a belonging, not instead of Australia, but alongside of it. You know, the pace, the community, the connection to culture and the ocean. And I know that I wouldn't be who I am now without those years. And I think that's what living in different places does. It doesn't replace where you're from. It layers you. It gives you perspective. And I'll always be Australian. Even now that I have 2 passports. Even with a life here in the United States that I love. With an American kid and an Aussie girl. At heart, I'm an Australian bloke who still needs that schooner at the pub as much as he needs that beer at the bar on Broadway. And choosing a bigger life doesn't mean that you stop loving where you came from. It just means that you accept the cost. If you've ever lived overseas or you're thinking about it, you probably already know what I mean. The question isn't whether it's worth it. It's whether you're willing to accept the cost and live with the decisions that you made or the regret for the ones that you didn't. Hooroo, mateys.